Elegant in design, precise in function, built with one purpose: to end lives. The machinery of execution stole from and inspired many of the world's greatest inventions. It mechanized torment and terror. Coming up next, the engineering behind the machines of malice. The end of the 15th century marks great achievements for Europe, like Columbus's exploration of the Americas. But at the same time, a fear grips the continent. Whole villages are rooting out witches and heretics.
Witches were seen as especially dangerous to larger society. They represented a disease of sorts that spread through people.
To keep witches and heretics from poisoning their lives and souls, villagers and agents of the church engineer execution machinery. One device in particular catches on like wildfire. They call it the stake burn. The year 1431. A 19-year-old Joan of Arc claims the voice of God helps her lead the French army to victory. But the British capture Joan and accuse her of heresy.
They say that the voices she heard did not come from God, but in fact came from Satan.
The British declare Joan guilty and burn her at the stake. Over the next 3 centuries, an estimated 100,000 accused witches and heretics perish by flames. Church officials believe fire purifies their souls. But there's nothing merciful about death by fire. The traditional stake burn starts with a victim lashed halfway up a vertical pole, contrary to popular depictions showing witches on top of the wood. Actual stake burn victims stand knee-deep in the fuel.
The reason why you would stack the victim into the pile is the fire is going to travel on the outside, where not only has fuel but also oxygen. If you actually put the victim into the pile, the fire has a longer way to travel up on the outside, and it also insulates the first few burns from the fire.
But is it the fire that kills the victim or the smoke?
Degrees by your feet.
Yeah, you can see their hair is moving because we're creating convection with the fire.
Heat convection is when hot gases rise while cool air rushes in below. This means a stake burn victim starts to cook in the hot air well before any flames start burning flesh.
I've got 116 by her feet. The fire is just really moving in. I've got right where that fire is starting to hit her. I'm reading 200, 500,
There it
600
goes.
degrees. Ah! Oh boy. Oh wow. Okay, so she's completely fully engulfed.
Yeah, she is. She just completely, almost like exploded.
The temperature of the stake burn is now 1600 degrees. This is the temperature at which crematoriums start reducing bones to ash.
Think of this right now as about maybe, I don't know, after she's completely burned up. This is a much later part of the execution. Yeah, I mean, she's completely dead by now.
Yeah.
She went up so fast.
During the Middle Ages, some of Europe's most fearsome dungeon machinery does not punish heretics. It persuades them to confess.
If the accused is not answering the questions properly in terms of a confession, that's when torture becomes acceptable.
And in England, one device gives a name to state-sponsored torture. They call it the Scavenger's Daughter. The Scavenger's Daughter is an iron A-frame device. Interrogators strap the prisoner's head into the top loop, hands into the midpoint, and ankles to the bottom rod. This compressed position causes unbearable pain and over time kills the victim. The Scavenger's Daughter first appears in 16th century England during the reign of Henry VIII. Interrogators inside the infamous Tower of London used the device to mercilessly torment heretics.
Scavenger's Daughter is a very simple resistance machine. So as a person tries to scrunch up to get out, this is a perfect design to be able to handle those kinds of loads.
But can a device that doesn't exert any visible force cause unbearable pain and death? To find out, a contortionist submits herself to the metallic embrace of a replica Scavenger's Daughter.
We're going to have to put this around your neck first. So.
The contortionist's flexibility will help her enter this restrictive device without immediate injury. As the Scavenger's Daughter grips its victim, it's the lack of movement that's supposed to cause pain.
See if you can get up from on your side.
Right? Got her?
Yep.
Okay.
Got it, okay?
I definitely feel more compressed on this one. In my right wrist, it's a lot tighter, and my neck's leaned back a little more.
How do you think you can get yourself back up?
Nope. Can't get up.
Whenever the human body is restricted without movement for long periods of time, your muscles lose blood flow, they start cramping, start spasming.
When human muscles don't move for lengthy periods of time, they accumulate a chemical waste called lactic acid. Too much lactic acid can eat away at human tissue and organs.
The longer that you're bound up, the more lactic acid you're going to produce. You're basically poisoning your body.
An overload of toxic lactic acid destroys the kidneys and causes them to fail within 2 weeks. So the Scavenger's Daughter is a device that prolongs the horror of execution. As fearful villagers and local priests battled the pox of witchcraft for nearly 300 years, they appropriate everyday technology to terrifying ends. And one of the most destructive devices they repurpose is the saw. During the Great Witch Hunt of the Middle Ages, French executioners used the saw to cut short the lives of pagans and women thought to be pregnant with the spawn of Satan. The executioners steal the idea of the saw from ancient Rome.
In the Roman world, from the reign of Caligula, for instance, saws were used to cut across the midsection. By the time we get closer to the medieval period, the idea is to cut someone in half from the groin and cutting towards the head.
The basic saw converts kinetic energy, or motion, into a frictional force that rips and tears through objects. European executioners apply that power to the human body by hanging a victim upside down from a crossbeam. Next, they grasp either end of a timber saw to shred through the condemned from groin to head. Coming up, a gut-wrenching machine that puts victims in a front-row seat to their own execution. During the Middle Ages, executioners employ mechanical devices to exact pain and extract confessions from heretics. But there is one machine of execution that is the very definition of gut-wrenching. The disembowelment crank.
This form of execution is horrific. It's difficult to put this experience into words.
For thousands of years, monarchs and magistrates disemboweled traitors and criminals to create the most painful and humiliating execution possible. But during the Middle Ages, gut-wrenching goes high-tech for heretics. When Spanish conquistadors capture the rebel Peruvian leader, Tupac Amaru, they put him on the crank device. He confesses to heresy shortly before dying. The disembowelment crank is a wooden axle supported by 2 vertical posts. An executioner turns a handle which rotates the axle and draws the intestines from the abdominal cavity. If done correctly, the victim survives the extraction, only to die of blood loss later.
Very simple principle. You have a simple crank with a lever arm. You're creating a torque which is going to spin our axle. As you can see, it gives you a nice mechanical advantage and you could keep the speed constant and gentle so that way you're not tearing the intestines.
But can this device extract 25 feet of human intestines as neatly as historical accounts describe? Develop the spiked helmet. Bavarian torturers take a cue from early European doctors who treat head wounds by drilling into the skull to release pressure caused by inflammation. But when it comes to witches and heretics who think devilish thoughts, interrogators twist this medical technique to deliver a splitting headache. The spiked helmet exploits the power and precision of a screw drive to send a sharp bit directly into the forehead. The victim can survive the immediate insult, but death isn't out of the question.
The spiked helmet has to restrain its victims because we have to have something holding the back of their head. As we apply a force to the front of the forehead, you don't want the head moving back. We need to lock that in. So in essence, this becomes a vice.
The helmet spike is long and narrow, so it can bore a clean hole through the skull.
As you can see, if I drop this, it will probably stick right in the wood. That is a great demonstration of piercing force.
Although the human skull is one of the thinnest bones in the body, it's also the most dense. Can the spiked helmet deliver the force necessary to drive the bit through a skull? To answer this question, a resin skull simulating human bone density goes into the device.
Okay, so let's give it a go.
It's still at least hitting the forehead.
The bit appears to be piercing into the simulated bone.
Come on, muscles.
Hey, man, I've never bored holes in anyone's skull before. All right. All right, so we're seeing bits of the skull fall down.
Okay, I'm definitely hearing some cracking.
Ah!
There we go.
So
I say we back it off and see what happened.
okay.
There you go.
There we go. Okay.
All right, you can see that our bit got stuck in the actual skull.
The bit may have broken, but it does puncture through the inside of the skull.
Now, I actually got a question about this.
All right.
If this lodged into somebody's forehead, would that be enough to kill them?
No, you could live with something like this. There'd probably be some changes to your personality, possibly changes to the way you think, simply because of the brain injury involved here. There's a lot of essentially what makes us human and makes us have personalities that's controlled in this area. This type of traumatic injury is going to cause the brain to swell and pressure to be put on other parts of the brain that do control things that are essential to living and breathing.
So the spiked helmet is a mind-numbing torture device, but not necessarily an execution machine. Today, surgeons continue to save lives by boring holes into the human skull. This is a proven technique to relieve life-threatening pressure caused by swelling around the brain. The technological advancements of the Middle Ages were a double-edged sword. Executioners wielded the principles of tension, friction, and fire in a bloody centuries-long battle against witches and heretics. But today, the forces behind these malicious machines help modern society create life-enhancing technology.